I'm gonna do an example here with the curtain wall just so you can see how you can use these properties in sequence, and maybe that'll help you when you're laying out your own curtain walls. So let's say I need to populate this wall here. This is an east sort of facade that opens up to a courtyard, and I want this to be clad with a glass system that's based on the structure. Now I have a sort of a regular grid between the structure, between the steel structure here, and then I have a very regular grid between the horizontal structure. So we need to sort of pay attention to that. But the first step is to go to a ground view here and just place something. I'm going to use the curtain wall 1 and snap to some of the walls so that I know that these dimensions are at least correct. And I can always adjust this. I can pull it farther later on if that's what I want to do. And this seems to be placed in reverse, so I'm going to use the change wall orientation, and there you can see it sitting just on the inside, and it's all just outside of the structure, so it's not, the structure isn't peeking through, and that's just what I want for my architecture. And if I go to 3D view here, it's not at the right level, so I'm going to adjust this to the roof. And again, the offset is wrong. So the curtain wall here, this curtain wall 1 system, I had changed it to basically a no justification. So let's try and edit the type here and modify some of its rules so it's working for us. So the vertical grid is going to want to fall on these lines, but these are not regular lines, like I said. So we're going to focus on how many divisions I actually want. So this is 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to edit this type, and I'm going to change the vertical grid to be a fixed number. And we're going to change this vertical grid to 3. So here I have a grid line, a grid line, and a grid line, but how would I go ahead and change these to the places that I need them? Well, I can go to an east elevation. Let's modify some of the elevation elements here. I'll change it to like a realistic so I can see where the structure is. I can see through this. It's kind of weird. And yeah, so this is the grid, and I need it to move to over here. So if I select that grid line, I need to first unpin it, and then I can use the align tool to align that grid line to the curtain wall grid line to the structural grid line. So I'll do the same here, select that grid line and align it. And let's change this to a medium. And then I could just drag this one, and that should snap to about the center. So that's good. These are where our mullions will go. If we go back to a 3D view, you can see that they're based on all of the center lines of my grid. Now the horizontal grid is a little bit different. We don't have a horizontal grid in here, so I'm going to select the curtain wall system, edit the type, and I'm going to change the horizontal grid to a fixed distance, and my floors are at 12 feet, or the grid for this structure happens to be 12 feet. So if I hit apply, even though I know that the structure is correct, it looks wrong because the justification is incorrect. So I'm going to change this horizontal to change the end, so it starts here and goes down. So now you can see I have a grid line here. Let's go to the east elevation. I have a grid line at all of the structure, and it's not perfect. If I had a lot of time, I could manipulate that. Let's go ahead and hide this wall so I can see what's going on. So let's say I wanted to add one more grid line here. I could just move this one up. By aligning that structural grid line to the level to the curtain wall grid. And now if we look at it, that works, right? I have a grid line here and a grid line here. Well, I probably need to add one because this is too big of a window. So if I tab over, you can see that this curtain wall panel is 187 square feet. It's a little bit too large, so I'm going to cut it down. By going to the east, going to architecture, and I can add a curtain grid. And I'll add this based on where I have this sort of opening or door on the other side, which I've sort of given myself a datum. So there we go. That is basically, as easy as it gets. You can, whenever you're placing a grid, you have a few options. So you can add one segment or whatever. If you just want to add one here versus all the way through. So just pay attention to that. So this is looking pretty good, although I don't have any mullions on here. So what would I do? I could go to architecture and I could go to mullion. I could be placing these individually, right? Let's not use that one. Let's use the square. Actually, let's use a 2.5 by 5. I could place this on the grid line. I could place this on a grid line segment, or I can just do all of the grid lines. So that's a very easy way to get all of your mullions to be placed. Or I can actually go and select the system. I can edit the type. And I can change these mullions to all be this 2.5 square, or sorry, 2.5 by 5. And here, because I didn't necessarily deal with the border, that's where you're seeing those gaps. So let's just go ahead and change all of these to that. So there you go. That is a quick way to create a curtain wall. I would do the same thing over here, modifying the elements to start at the top, end at the bottom, and then I could adjust, this last one so that it's in place based on the grid, and I could do the same thing on this end. So the next tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do embedded curtain walls. If I wanted a window that's quite large here, and then we'll go into dealing with punched windows, and then talk about shading systems.